What was your reaction when you found out the victim was a cop you knew?
It was just shocking. Derek and Linda both had worked as sheriff's deputies for many, many years. So everybody knew those two. Mr. Cax Pullock showed up in the basement and shot her in the process, and Derek then shot and ultimately killed Mr. Cax Pullock.
Did other officers believe his story?
People had questions because so much stuff didn't add up. We tracked the phone number and found that it was from Belize. He said somebody is dying today.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's Crime Exposé takes us to Stone Mountain, Georgia. A wife was attacked and murdered in her home in front of her husband, who shot the perpetrator dead on the spot. Was it a robbery gone wrong or something far more sinister? As the investigation deepened, a dark secret emerged that would leave everyone questioning the story. Stone Mountain, Georgia. 44-year-old Linda Yancey was a DeKalb County police officer and mother of 2 boys. Linda was married to her high school sweetheart, Derek, also an officer.
I knew both Derek and Linda Yancey from my time working in the courthouse as a public defender. Derek was assigned to the main courthouse. Linda was assigned primarily in the juvenile court.
Derek was a hard worker. From everything I knew of him, he was a good officer. I knew of Linda from high school. Everybody liked her.
The Yanceys were well known in their community. To friends and family, they appeared to have it all.
They were both very well respected, very well liked, picture-perfect family.
But one day, the picture-perfect family came apart.
I actually was in my bed at home asleep when the news broke that there had been a murder and Linda Yancey was dead. My husband woke me up and told me it was on the news, and we were shocked.
A desperate 911 call from Derek Yancey had dispatched police to the Yancey home. There, they found Linda dead, along with a 22-year-old day laborer named Marcial Cox Pullock. Derek told police a dramatic story of a strong-armed robbery gone terribly wrong.
Derek claimed he picked up a guy to help him do some yard work that day because he had his own private landscaping.
They went to Home Depot, got some supplies, went back home, and began doing the yard work. Linda was home and was going to go and run some errands, and Derek went inside to give Linda some cash.
According to Derek, he had left Mr. Cox Pullock alone for only a few minutes while he spoke with Linda.
Derek stated that he and Linda were downstairs in the basement, and that's where he was when Mr. Cax Pullock showed up in the basement and tried to get the cash from Linda and shot her in the process. And Derek, having his own personal weapon on him, then shot and ultimately killed Mr. Cax Pullock.
Like a run and gun battle. It happened so quick.
After shooting Mr. Cax Pullock, Derek did call 911. He was instructed to begin CPR on Linda. He said he did begin CPR on Linda, but it wasn't consistent because he was running back and forth out the door looking for help.
By the time EMS arrived at the Yancey home, Linda and Cox Pullock were dead. A handgun lay on the floor next to Mr. Cox Pullock's left hand. Detectives soon learned that both guns used in the shootings were owned by Derek Yancey.
Derek told the police that he had his service weapon kept above the refrigerator in the kitchen, and that was the gun that Mr. Cax Pullock must have pulled and taken. The fact that the initial reports was that there was a day laborer involved was another level of shock.
People in the courts and law enforcement community were stunned by the violent murder of one of their own. They struggled to wrap their heads around the shootout that Derek somehow survived.
After the initial shock of her death, along with the other young man, you start thinking about things like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. I mean, if I was going to do that, Derek would have been the first one that I took out, if I was going to do something like that. And it just didn't make sense.
Within days, people in the sheriff's department rank and file were questioning the shootings. They questioned why, if the laborer wanted cash, would he murder the wife and not shoot Derek, who posed a greater threat to the armed robber. And detectives and EMS who responded to the 911 call at the Yancey home found Derek's behavior troubling.
I talked to a couple of people that, was at the crime scene. They just didn't feel like he was terribly emotional about the fact that he just took a life and he had lost his wife.
So were Derek and Linda's co-workers voicing doubts about Derek's story?
People had questions because so much stuff didn't add up. So much stuff didn't make sense. And it got to the point there was just so many things that were said that people just didn't believe anymore.
Sheriff's investigators looked closer into the Yancey marriage and finances. They found that there were conflicts and that the couple had talked of divorce. And they carefully analyzed Derek's version of the shootings before Linda was even laid to rest.
Linda's funeral was very sad. A lot of emotions there, a lot of questions.
As the reality of the death sunk in, support from Derek's fellow officers began to erode.
90% of the people who was at the funeral knew Derek had did this. People talked about it at the funeral. Like, he know he did this. I mean, in the parking lot, he did it.
But the court of public opinion carried little weight in a murder investigation. Police were about to learn much more about the grieving husband.
Derek was arrested and charged with the murder of Linda. It just beyond surreal.
The Cobb County Sheriffs had launched an investigation into the murder of police officer Linda Yancey and the shooting of the alleged perpetrator by Linda's husband, Derek. Doubts about Derek's story had spread to news reports, and people were waiting for the other shoe to drop. And 3 months after his wife's murder, Derek Yancey was finally charged with the double murder.
If I had to describe my initial thoughts when I heard that Derek was arrested and charged with the murder of Linda, I would say disbelief. It just beyond surreal.
Yeah, the media kind of grabbed hold of that and ran with that. That was huge. And I think one of the reasons it was huge is that it was just so hard to fathom that something like that would take place.
The shock went through the courthouse. Derek and Linda both had worked as sheriff's deputies for many, many years. And so everybody knew those two. The clerks knew them, the judges, the other courthouse staff, the public defender's office.
The developing murder case against a sheriff's deputy generated a lot of interest throughout the community, with each new revelation more stunning than the last. And when Derek was released on bond and fitted with an ankle monitor, many cried foul.
After Derek was taken into custody and he was able to get a bond, I know I couldn't believe it. And I talked with some others who couldn't believe that he actually was granted bond.
While prosecutors prepared to go to trial, Derek stayed out of the public eye. But in his parents' home, Derek was biding his time and plotting. And one day, he made his move and disappeared.
Obviously, an ankle monitor doesn't just fall off your ankle, and the news was reporting that it was forcibly removed, so it doesn't leave much to the imagination on how that could have happened.
Within a day, Derek was captured on video boarding a bus, defying police to catch me if you can.
I was placed as lead investigator on this case. So I was charged with finding this guy. And we did get video footage of him at the Greyhound bus station. Now, to this day, I don't know how he got to the bus station. Derek had planned this, so it was a real smart escape on his part. Real smart.
Describe the shock to the sheriff's department and the court when this happened.
There were people who were angry that he absconded because there was a school of thought that he shouldn't have been given a bond in the first place. And there was the other half, I would say, was astonished and disappointed.
After the escape, you go back to the home, interview the family, and that's what we did. And I don't believe he told anybody. I mean, I really believe in my heart his family was clueless for what he had done.
The story of this murder that grew, it was already pretty high profile because it involved a person in law enforcement, and one of the victims was also someone in law enforcement. That already generated a lot of attention from the local media, but it really expanded once he absconded.
Months went by, and no one in DeKalb County Sheriff's Department had any idea where Derek was. Some speculated that Derek had traveled to Mexico or Central America.
I can't begin to tell you how many man hours my partner and myself spent interviewing people, sitting on houses, sitting on places that we think he might come to. And we did this countless, because I had to give updates on what we had, and it hurt my heart. Every week I had nothing, absolutely had nothing. And we got a tip.
DeKalb County had offered a reward for the capture of Derek Yancey, and eventually someone took the bait. It didn't take long for U.S. Customs to locate him, drinking in a South American bar.
We tracked the phone number and found that it was from Belize. That's how we were able to get him. I think he was relieved, in some way that this was over with. And he did try, talking to me and my partner as we transported him, and we didn't really engage in conversation with him, but he said some things of, that he didn't do it.
Derek's flight from justice had only delayed the inevitable. He would have a chance to give his side of the story in court and let the chips fall where they may.
I don't even think I would have written a movie script as tangled as this case.
By the time Derek Yancey's murder trial began, it was well known that the Yancey marriage was on the rocks. Linda had confided in friends and co-workers that she was planning to leave her husband and that he was abusive. Derek's public defender had a nearly impossible job of convincing a jury that her client was innocent.
I don't even think I would have written a movie script as tangled as this case. I've had cases before where it was a domestic issue where one partner killed the other. I've had cases where someone was facing life in prison and absconded, but never all of these things together in one case.
What were other friends and cops saying about the couple, and what do you think happened?
Law enforcement, tight-knit family, so you hear things. And one of the rumors was that Linda wanted out the marriage, and I'm really thinking that argument ensued that night after she had got home, and she might have said, "Hey, I'm leaving," something to that effect. And that's something Derek didn't want to hear, and he shot her.
As the trial began and the prosecution's point of view or prosecution's theory was that Derek was the one who shot Linda, and that he then shot Mr. Cax Pollock and staged the scene. Derek knew from the beginning that he was going to hire someone to essentially frame. And so the day laborer, Mr. Cax Pollock, was the perfect target from the state's perspective.
One of the most damning moments of the trial came when the medical examiner took the stand. His testimony contradicted Derek's account that while on the phone with a 911 operator, he had tried to save Linda's life.
The medical examiner's testimony at trial basically said that had Derek been doing chest compressions as instructed, he would have had more blood on himself, especially on his hands and other areas. And the blood spatter on Derek was not consistent with someone doing CPR.
But prosecutors said it was Derek's service revolver conveniently found near Mr. Cox Pollock's left hand that was irrefutable evidence that the murder scene had been staged.
The position of the gun was another piece of evidence that presented a problem in terms of raising a defense from Mr. Yancey. The gun was in Mr. Cax Pollock's left hand, and from interviews with his roommate and other family members, Mr. Cax Pollock was right-handed.
He planned it. He was going to get somebody to be a sacrificial lamb that morning. So if it wouldn't have been that young man, it would have been another young man. You know, Derek had already made up in his mind, this is going to be the story. Somebody else is dying today.
Finally, the prosecution rested. For 3 days, the jury deliberated, nearly as long as it took for the prosecution to present the evidence.
Every day that we came back and the jury still hadn't had a verdict, it kind of made us, the defense team, feel like maybe we had a chance. When the jury was brought in, after indicating they had a verdict, you could hear a pin drop. I think everybody was holding their breath.
Derek Yancey was found guilty of murder in the deaths of Linda Yancey and Marciel Cox Pollock. It was a verdict that surprised no one. Derek received 2 consecutive life sentences, meaning he will die in prison. During the murder trial, prosecutors presented evidence that the Yanceys were heavily in debt, contrary to the image Derek had created. Police say in his mind, killing his wife was the answer to their financial problems. Derek Yancey's selfish greed took both parents from his sons and deprived Linda and Marciel's families of their loved ones forever. And now, it's time for today's Safety Spotlight. It's a surprising statistic, but studies show that as many as 40% of police families experience some kind of domestic violence. Victims in these cases may feel especially vulnerable because their abuser has a service gun, knows the location of domestic violence centers, and may be able to manipulate the system or avoid punishment using their law enforcement connections. But help is available. For a list of advocates and shelters in your state, go to womenslaw.org. I'm Nancy O'Dell. For everyone here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe.